Hey, folks, welcome to another episode of the California Clays Podcast. I'm your host, Henning. On today's episode, I'm joined by someone who represents the next generation of elite competitive shooters. His name is Greyson Ponder. Greyson's journey began with hunting and fishing with his dad long before he ever stepped onto a competition course. And what started as a family passion turned into a lifelong pursuit behind the gun. He's a masterclass competitor, instructor, and proud member of Team Kolar, with podium finishes at major state, regional, and national events across sporting clays, FITASC, and Helice. In this conversation, we talk about his training process, his recent shoots, what it's like balancing work and competition, and how faith and mindset shape his approach to life and sport. So let's get right into it. Greyson Ponder, welcome to the California Clays Podcast. Thank you for joining me, man.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. I wanted to interview you. I never met you before.
Yeah.
I met you at Gary's place at FLC Shooting Grounds, and I got to say, man, it was an interesting shoot and tournament first and foremost. But he did the all around. He had all the different events and disciplines there. I don't want to say one of the few places that you could do this, but it was just one of those kind of tournaments that if you're a real true competitive shooter, you really want to be there for something like that, right? It's
For
something that
sure.
is unique. It's different. It's not something that you're going to be able to even do at most places. And you ended up winning the all around outright, defeating many, many great, phenomenal shooters, professionals, etc. And I hadn't heard about you before that. No offense, but I just, in and out of the shooting game, I just didn't know your name. So, what I noticed about you though, while you were competing, and I was, behind you while you were shooting Helice and a couple other things,
Mhm.
you were cooler than a cucumber the whole time, man. It was hot out there. I mean, I'm sweating just sitting there watching, and I'm like dripping sweat, and didn't break a sweat at all. Not only did you not break a sweat from the heat, but the competition either. So I was like, I got to talk to this guy and figure out what he's about. So, Greyson, for folks like myself who just met you or are about to learn about you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. And thank you again for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
I live in Antioch, Illinois, Northern Illinois. If for those of you who don't know where that is, you probably know where Northbrook Sports Club is. I'm about 15 minutes from there, so I've got a unique opportunity to practice there, and we'll get into that more. But I've been shooting for about 7 years now, 4 years on the pro circuit, which I've really enjoyed in recent times. But I grew up hunting. Grew up with my mom and dad. I'm an only child, so I had a kind of a unique opportunity just to have all the attention to myself, I guess, and just really enjoy life with them. But it's been a great journey, in professional shooting and everything else that I do, and I'm really excited to see where the journey takes me.
I was reading about your bio, I think on the Kohler website. You've got a bio on there, and you've been around the outdoors and firearms since you were a kid. What was it about that background and experience that helped you kind of become the shooter that you are right now?
Sure. Yeah, I think I've been hunting with my dad specifically. My mom hunts with us as well, but mainly my dad since I was probably like two.
Wow.
Honestly, it was the first time that he took me out duck hunting or something. Not that I was actually participating and shooting, right? But I was there. And since then I shot my first duck when I was 7, my first deer when I was younger than that, and it's just kind of snowballed into this great passion that I share with my dad and with other people that we've met along the way in just love for the outdoors, love for God's creation and everything that he's given us. So my dad and I have been to some pretty cool places. You can probably see some of the stuff behind me in the background.
Yeah.
I've gotten
No, it's
more
great.
around of just really cool waterfowl trips and big game hunts. We've been to Africa, and we've been really blessed in order to do that. And it's kind of shaped me into, I think, being a little bit more mature because the time that a lot of kids would have had with their friends at school or hanging out, I was out in Alaska, with a
Yeah.
bunch of people who were triple my age and just hanging out with the guys and stuff. So that was definitely a good opportunity that I had. And I think that that's really translated into being a little bit more mature for my age in competitive shooting as well.
No, I would definitely say you're mature for your age. You mind if I ask how old are you?
I'm 22.
Oh yeah. I mean, geez, you're like 22 going on like 45, I swear. But
Wow. Wow.
No, yeah, it's funny that you say that too, because a lot of the guys that I know out here, a lot of the younger shooters out here that have similar backgrounds to you, where their family brought them out hunting early, was involved in their lives, they were traveling with their parents, absolutely this similar, kind of background and experience. So
Sure.
mature, respectful, well-mannered, kind of understand the world a little bit differently than I see a lot of folks that haven't been exposed to that. Not to say that there aren't other ways to maturity, but I'm curious. So, how did your family get into hunting? Because coming from a family that doesn't hunt at all, and we don't have a background in that. In fact, I don't think, my parents are originally from India. I don't think that's like a common thing out there, where people are hunting and doing those kind of things. So, what was your background and your father's background in that? Was it just a family tradition passed down, or did he
Yeah,
start the tradition?
it was more of a transition or a tradition from my dad's side. My mom's
Okay.
side of the family didn't really hunt, but my dad's family is of Montenegrin and like Eastern European descent. So
Oh, okay.
Montenegrins are that's like a big hunting tradition community deal. And my parents both grew up in downtown Chicago, so there wasn't a lot of hunting that went on there. But
Hunting
my
for food and drinks, maybe, but
right, right, like a slice of deep dish pizza or something. But my grandfather, my dad's dad, he was a huge conservationist, and
Okay.
he had multiple hunt clubs, not for clay targets, but like pheasants and quail clubs out in the western Illinois region. So my dad always grew up being, a bird boy or hunting pheasants. They had a lot of bird dogs and stuff, and my dad took that a lot farther than uh, he took it farther with me than he did with his dad. They didn't do a lot of the waterfowl or the big game and stuff. My dad kind of found his own passion for that, and then him and I have carried that on.
No, it's awesome, man. Honestly, I have a buddy who took me out on my first duck hunt. His name's Kirk Sheely. I'm gonna throw a shout out to him. Super good dude, a good shooter as well. And he invited me to my first duck hunt. I'd never been hunting prior to that. I was the idiot that went and bought all the Sitka gear for my one first hunt. I think I had $1,000 worth of Sitka gear on me for my first duck hunt, and it wasn't even bad weather. I mean, I think we had great, like sunny October weather like we do right now.
Yeah.
But I was that guy. But what's funny is I can see how hunting can shape you as a person and
Hmm.
how it makes you, a certain way, right? Because your connection to nature, your understanding and your respect for nature, and then also just understanding the full life cycle of nature from life to death, I think is a very important lesson for people to learn and understand, So it was a pretty eye-opening experience for me having done it later in life. I'm curious, like when you were doing it, you were much younger.
Hmm.
How did it impact you and make you feel like when you killed your first animal, when you went through all that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, one big thing that my dad always imprinted on me, and this was from my grandfather, was that when you're hunting, it's called hunting for a reason. It's not called killing, right?
Right,
When you're fishing, it's called fishing for a reason. It's not called catching, right?
right,
So
right.
that was a big part of my childhood, learning that, you are out there experiencing nature, you're experiencing creation and just the things that you can do with the people you love. And it's not just about shooting a big buck or, limiting out on ducks and geese or something like that. Now, we're out there for that, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it, but that's not the main point. And
Yeah,
I think that's something that I want to pass down to my children at some point as well, and I do with my other friends. But it's just such a beautiful experience, to be out in the woods or out in a boat or anything like that. Just kind of, it's peaceful, right? You don't have a whole lot else to worry about. You're worried about the task at hand. And so, going back to your question about when I shot my first duck or first deer or anything like that, it was kind of like I had watched my older friends or my dad for many years do the same thing, and then it was kind of finally my turn. So, not to be, like there wasn't any remorse or anything for the animals that I was shooting or anything like that, but as a young kid, you get to that point and then you finally, do it, right? And it was a very exciting feeling, and then that just fueled the fire.
I mean,
And
it's like the most ancient rite of passage. I feel like it,
oh
right?
yeah. Yeah.
Humans have been hunting and fishing and doing these things for since the beginning of time, right? So,
Right.
at least for our species. So, I feel like when I killed my first duck, it was a pretty I'll admit it, it was kind of a cathartic experience for me, right? Because I'd never done anything like that before.
Sure.
I genuinely felt bad initially, but then I also kind of under it just I don't know, there's something clicked in me, and I'd like to say it was my hunting drive or whatnot, but I almost felt like I did feel and understand that whole cycle, and
Yep.
understanding it. And I'll tell you this, I respect meat a lot more than I ever did.
Hmm.
The meat that I'm eating, I feel like I understand it and respect it more, and don't waste it.
Yeah.
Where before it would have just it would have been an afterthought. I wouldn't have even thought of it.
Right. Yeah,
So,
and I think part of that that's helped me as well is we've been fortunate enough to go to Africa a number of times
mhm.
and hunt out there, and the conservation that goes into African hunting and just African game conservation as a whole is a really beautiful process to take a look at.
Yeah,
Everything you do out there, every single dollar goes back to the community to build schools and wells and foster, the future generations that are in whatever country you're in or community.
mhm.
And then all the meat, all the animals you harvest goes back to the community as well. We have like a small
Yeah,
percentage while we're there. And we do the same thing, back here in the States of just, taking care of the animals, not wasting anything, not going over your limit, taking the oldest trophy you possibly can, right? Helping future generations of animals, whatever that species may be, kind of grow and then, multiply.
yeah. No, I mean the conservation was a huge lesson for me to
Hmm.
understand that as well. Didn't realize how much goes into it. Didn't realize, how people take it seriously and understand the I don't know the right term for this, but the cycle of animals, if that
Yeah.
makes sense, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
when you're thinking of the Pacific Flyway and how the ducks come down and how they, migrate down, and just understanding that whole ecosystem was really interesting and intriguing to me. And then not to go too far down this path, but the relationship between a dog and the human focus on the same task was the most amazing thing to witness for
Hmm.
me. You know what I mean? Like seeing the
Absolutely.
dog get so excited, go after it, come back and work together with a human, just something about that just really
Yeah.
was awesome. So, anyways,
Yeah, we've got a black lab that we've trained and he's fun to watch.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
no, they're great.
Yeah.
So you started off in high school competing, right? Is that or were you competing prior to high school?
No, I started, well, technically not in high school, but I was on a high school team. I started in
Yeah.
eighth grade.
Okay.
And then, my next year was my freshman year of high school. So yeah.
Okay. And now you competed with the Central Falcons
Yep.
in Wisconsin, and you were shooting SCTP, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So trap, skeet, sporting clays. How did that background shape you into the shooter that you are today?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, I started out hunting and I was always kind of the ace. Like when we were hunting with other guys and stuff, they would always say that, like I was one of the better shots in the group and things like that. And I was never on an organized sports team. I never played, soccer, football, basketball, or anything like that because I was actually homeschooled.
Hmm.
I went to a co-op homeschool all the way through high school, and then I actually did online college as well. So I had the opportunity to go and do things that other people didn't, and that made me a little bit of a better shooter because those things were hunting.
Hmm.
And so my mom one day, I think she was looking in the newspaper, like one of the local newspapers, and she saw that there was a trap and ski team, like an actual organized team where you go and shoot clays. We had nothing, or we had no prior experience about clay shooting. Like I went and shot trap but once, every great while, but didn't know that there was a professional side to it, didn't know that there were team sports in it. And so we looked around a little bit and we landed with the Central Falcons because they were the closest team in proximity to my house. That's kind of how that works. You go to the
Okay.
closest team to you. And honestly, never look back. Like I had my first practice and I believe it was 2017 when I was in eighth grade and just kind of fell in love with it. Started shooting trap and skeet and sporting clays, had all my first practices in those, and then went to my first events that year and I just started using the natural talent that I was given at a young age, the things my dad taught me just for wing shooting, right?
Mhm.
Just applying that. I shot like an old 391 semi-auto, didn't know anything about any of the
Hey,
rules.
that's
Any
a
of the,
great auto to start off with,
oh,
although
it's great.
say,
Yeah, I smacked stuff with it, but I didn't know any better. I didn't know any about the
yeah.
rules about how the game was supposed to be played. I was just seeing a target and shooting it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of a really freeing aspect for me because there wasn't a lot of pressure. And my first year, I was one of the most successful intermediate entry shooters in the entire state of Wisconsin, still to this day. I made the senior varsity all-around squad, even though I wasn't even a high school shooter. I had my scores high enough to be that, and then from there,
Nice.
I just kind of took off.
What do you think clicked for you right away? I mean, obviously you have good eyes, I'm assuming. You don't wear correction or anything like that?
I don't.
Okay. And when you were hunting, what clicked for you in hunting and how did you bring that over into clay shooting?
Yeah, I think, you bring up eyes, and I think that's a really good point. When we're hunting, we're not expecting anything to come from a certain direction, right?
Right.
We're just looking for movement, looking for birds specifically. We'll use that. And a bird flies in front of you, you see the bird, you mount right to it and shoot, and there's not a whole lot of process before that. So when I started shooting trap or skeet or sporting clays back on my old team, especially sporting clays, I was shooting low mount a lot, just shooting it like I was hunting. I wasn't totally worried about where I was breaking the target, where I was starting my gun and stuff. And I learned about that a little bit and kind of honed my skills that I had beforehand, but it just kind of translated naturally, honestly.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you had been hunting, you said, from a very early age. So
Mhm.
it felt like a natural transition for you to go into the clay target shooting.
It did, yeah. I mean, even when I was like 3 and 4 years old, my first toys were one of those little like toy guns or like a Red Ryder BB gun. So I was always, mounting a gun somewhere in the house or watching videos and stuff.
It's funny. I've heard a lot, especially from some of the pros, that the Red Ryder BB gun was like an
Mhm.
instrumental part of their upbringing or training in clay shooting, right? Because you have to kind of project where the BB is going to go.
Right.
And so it helps develop that hand-eye coordination in placing a shot somewhere. Would you
Yeah.
agree, or is that something that
No, I think that's definitely true. I mean, it's probably one of the least accurate guns ever made,
right?
right? Just
It
because
totally is.
the sights are never quite right, and it doesn't matter how much you aim like it's a rifle, it's never going to go where you want. But if your eyes are on the target, usually you're going to hit something. So
You
I
can
think that's
direct it. Yeah, you feel. We after the state shoot, was it this year? This year or this last year they did too. We had a Red Ryder BB gun a shoot off competition between the
okay.
North and the South, just in the by the RV parks where we were all hanging out and drinking, and it was a great time. We were throwing cans up and trying to plink them,
Yeah,
but you have to like project where it's going, right, and kind of feel where that's
right,
going. I think that
right.
translates pretty well in the clay shooting as well. So.
Yeah.
Um, Now, you've been competing in the major, since you got into sporting clays. When did you make the transition from SETP to NSCA?
So I'm very, very, very fortunate that I live as close as I do to Northbrook, right? One
Right.
of the biggest clubs in the nation that holds the big shoots and everything
Yep.
like that. So that was actually a place where my whole team would go and practice while
Oh,
we were
wow.
in the NSC. Yeah, I mean, right of
Yeah.
all places. So we would hold our skeet practices there on Wednesdays and Thursdays, big skeet club. And then as I grew as a shooter and kind of figured out that I liked sporting clays a little bit more than trap and skeet. Nothing, against them, but I liked sporting clays better. So me and like 4 or 5 other people on the team would go and have our own designated practices at Northbrook, which then translated into shooting some of the monthly registered tournaments. And then it was like, oh my gosh, they have a regional, and I hear there's going to be 800 people there, never done it before. So we're going to shoot it.
And having Northbrook in your backyard is huge, right? I mean,
Oh
that
yeah.
is one. It's known as one of the hardest places to shoot. One of them.
Yeah. Yep.
And if that's your normal, you know, I mean,
Right.
you're setting yourself up for success,
I was
100%. So
pretty spoiled, and I still am, to be honest. But
yeah. And then
going
you've
back
got
to
Gary down south from you, who
yeah,
also sets amazing targets too.
yeah,
So
yeah. And then going up in Wisconsin when I was on the team, I mean, I've probably got like almost 10 trap and skeet clubs that some have sporting clays within like an hour drive of me. So I would go and shoot one, and then through all of our high school tournaments, we would just kind of work around the state of Wisconsin or shoot at Northbrook, and everything was close. So we've got a lot of opportunity here. And yeah, but going back to your question about how that kind of translated into professional or, shooting the major tournaments, one of my best friends, Devin, I was actually the best man at his wedding. He shot me and him were always competing for one and two in sporting clays and everything else while we were on the team. And he actually started taking lessons from Wendell
Okay.
at a young age because he would go and shoot like the Gator Cup or he would shoot nationals every once in a while before I even knew what any of that was. And so seeing him take the lessons and stuff kind of spurred, a little bit in me to go find a coach like that or go shoot some of those bigger tournaments because he would come back from one of those shoots with more experience and then he would jump up a little bit for me. So then I would have to work to catch up.
Mhm.
And
So
him
you
and I
did notice that difference. Him
for
competing
sure.
at the NSCA level, he was incrementally getting better.
For sure. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you're just shooting harder targets,
Right.
right? You're
Right.
shooting harder targets, more events. He was shooting more targets in tournaments than I was. I was shooting the same stuff that I knew around here. So it's just better experience.
Interesting.
And,
Okay.
uh,
And I
and
mean, it's not interesting. I mean, it makes sense. But
yeah,
SCTP, the targets aren't as hard.
no,
Okay.
no. I mean, especially, like SCTP Nationals throws pretty good targets. That's at the
Yeah.
Cardinal Center in Ohio. And they were fairly similar targets to what we actually saw this year at the regional.
Hmm.
Um, State competitions sometimes throw some some decent targets, but everything else for like 90% of the year is like kids and clays charity type targets,
Got
if
it.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, how do you plan your time around these shoots since you're working? You've
Mhm.
already finished school.
Yep.
How are you getting in between all of them, and what's your planning process around that?
Yeah, I mean, the season typically, I guess, starts in February, usually with some of the Florida shoots, right?
Mhm.
I've actually only shot the Jack Links once. I typically don't shoot the other, what would that be, like the RC Cup, the Caribbean Classic. I don't usually make it to those. My goal when I started professionally shooting, right, and shooting all the major events was to make Team USA. And when I started, I was a junior. I'm no longer a junior now. This is my first year as an open. But
Okay.
in order to make that goal, right, you have to shoot all the regionals, the US Open, nationals. Those are the qualifying tournaments. So those were the ones that I've wanted to make for all these years because those are the qualifiers. And I try to dial back a little bit on the other tournaments that I shoot. Like I'll shoot a FITASC Grand Prix sometimes, depending on the schedule, or like the Browning Briley, or like the all around, right? That's one that
Mhm.
I try and never miss because it's one of the most fun shoots of the year.
It's
But
fun, and I mean, I learned so much shooting that thing. So,
yeah, yeah.
that's a good place to learn if you don't know what you're doing, which is neat. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. But at a minimum, I make all the regionals, US Open and nationals.
Mhm.
And, depending on how that schedule determined by the NSCA is spaced out, I'll slide a couple more in there, like a state here and there, or like I said, a FITESC Grand Prix. But I try and keep it at usually no more than like two a month, two big shoots, where we're there
Right.
for a week, because I feel like if I'm going back to back to back to back to back from March all the way to October, A, there's no time to do anything other than shoot, right? And
Right.
then B, there's really no time to practice and work on the things that you found from the last tournament. So I
Mhm.
like to try and keep like a week buffer in between shoots or a week after, beat. But sometimes it doesn't allow it. Like this year's schedule from August to September with major shoots was pretty insane. We were back to back almost the whole year. So
Right.
sometimes it doesn't work out, but I try and space out as much as I can.
What's your preparation process, or are you using these shoots as like your training process? Because it sounds like you're not getting in a lot of training in between, or do you?
I would get more in than you think, but there's still not a lot of time. Like I'm glad that we have at least, 2.5 weeks before nationals that I can actually focus on some stuff and get into it. But I definitely use the prior shoot as training going into the next. I mean, there's always things that you're learning that you can carry in through the next one, but if I had like a full week or more time before a shoot, which is usually how it works out just with other things in life, I kind of use that week in like a couple of different segments where, I'm identifying some problems or some solutions to problems at the beginning of the week. And then I'm conditioning those problems in the middle of the week, really just getting reps in, shooting a lot of the same stuff to kind of ingrain that in my mind. And then usually the last things that I do going into a tournament is I'll shoot for score. So I'll shoot like only 100 rounds of sporting clays, a full course, or I'll shoot 50 feet task, just a full parkour. No extra shots, no like, I miss a bird. Okay, now I'm gonna shoot that 3 or 4 more times. I just, burn through it just like I was shooting in a tournament. Kind of get my mind right. And
Okay.
then after that, I just evaluate kind of the whole week what I need to bring into the next tournament.
Hmm.
Yeah.
One that makes a lot of sense, but what are you working on right now? Like, what are your takeaways from some of the training that you're doing?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I'm working on now is to how to deal mentally with the task that's at hand.
Mm,
Um, and every shooter's experienced this at some point. You on just a specific station, say you run your first 3 pairs, and then the trapper says last pair, and then maybe you miss a bird in the last, pair or something like that. And that's always something that everybody needs to get over. But I've done a good job at getting rid of that kind of. I've been training shooting 5 or 6 pairs just to get rid of the last pair, like anxiety that comes with it sometimes. But I've been trying to be much more disciplined in my head while I'm in the box of just focusing on what's going on, not worrying about anything behind me, carts or people or just things outside of shooting, like what am I going to eat for lunch or, something
yeah.
stupid.
Or who you're competing against, right? What I noticed about you,
Mhm.
I mean, you were up against Derek Mine for the overall,
Yep.
right? Now, uh, amateur like me would be nervous as all heck. I'm like, this guy's an Olympian. He's a world champion. He's a national.
Right.
This is all the stuff that would
Right.
be going on in my head if I were to compete against Derek going up there. And that's why I'm not a champion. But what are you thinking? Like, what's your process? How do you clear your mind and focus on the task at hand? Because it
Yeah,
seems like
I
you're doing
mean,
really well.
thank you. Thank you. It's a work in progress for sure.
Really? Okay.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've shot the full tour for 3 years, and before that, I had a lot of great championships and a lot of great accomplishments when I was in the SCTP or just local club shoots. But I was told by my coach and by my parents and people that were around me that, you're going to have to go through some hard times. They give you the talk, right? Like
Right.
you're going to have to lose to win and this and that. But it was like, I knew I was good, and I don't think that, honestly, I don't think this is talked about enough for
Yeah.
younger shooters or older shooters. But when you're coming up, you know that you're good. Like you
Right.
have talent, right? Your coach is telling you you're good. Otherwise, they wouldn't want to coach you, right? That's kind of obvious.
Yep.
And so when you go out and you shoot these events, like you have a certain expectation in your mind of what you should shoot or how you should perform based on what you do at home. And that is so far from the truth, can I tell you?
Right.
Um, One of the first years I went and shot the Browning Briley, that was one of my first like big events, a bunch of people, a lot of money, the whole deal. And I was shooting like 50s and 60s on 100 bird main events. And it was like,
Really?
oh, seriously, this was two
Wow.
years ago. So it was crushing me because then I would come and shoot a monthly at Northbrook and I would win it with like a 95. And I'm like,
Right.
what's the difference here? Um,
I know that feeling. I'm not at your level, but I mean, I definitely know the feeling of like you have success and you start
yeah.
thinking you're good, and then you get humbled. And
Oh,
then you're like, what's
absolutely.
wrong with me? What did I do wrong? What am I losing? You start looking
Yeah,
for reasons, excuses, whatever it is, right? I mean, even before
absolutely.
this, I was talking to you about the extreme FITASC at CPO and how I just was blaming, I'm not blaming the shells, but going like, was it the shells? I was using
Yeah.
Helice shells instead of Sporting shells. And so what do you do? Like, how do you recover from that?
Yeah, I mean, going through that entire year, it was hard because I had like one third place junior finish in a prelim, for like the whole year. And I shot everything all the way to nationals. And it was tough because, I feel like as a younger shooter, my parents they've blessed me with all the opportunities they've given me and they're there, they're helping me pay for things and stuff like that. So, you feel a certain responsibility on yourself to perform, right? To
Right.
make up for what they're giving you. But I started to slowly, and I'm still realizing that it's totally driven by expectations. And
Hmm.
it's not always an expectation of like, I start the round thinking I'm going to shoot this score. It's like the little things during the round that get you of you step up to a station and you see those two easy targets that you've shot a million times, right? And you don't give them any respect
Right.
and you squirt one, right? And
Yep.
there's the one target that cost you, right? Or you shoot with, those top shooters, which I as a kid looked up to and I still do, like Derek Mine.
Mhm.
And you think, maybe you think they're not going to miss, or like you have to shoot this certain score in order to beat them because they usually shoot a 24 on FITASC. You know what I mean? Something like
Yeah.
that. So it comes with just being honest with yourself, recognizing the thoughts that you have in your head and not just brushing them aside. And then really focusing on process. You know, I have a mental game that I shoot on each station or things that I do, like many great shooters do, but focusing on that process instead of your outcome has been a really big part of my mental game. And it's definitely gotten rid of some of that little anxiety or the expectations that I had as a younger shooter. But there's times still that I'll be in the box and I've shot, I've run the course up until station 9 or something. And then that one thought comes into my head, like I bet that one person, I bet whoever that is ran this station, right? So I have to. And I've gotten better about maybe that thought's coming as soon as I'm closing my gun and I'm about to call pull. And now I'm disciplined enough to let down, go through my process, and then shoot it with a clear mind. So that's something I've really been working on.
Well said, man. No, that's great. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that in just more
Yeah.
detail? Like, what have you discovered to like, what do you do in your process?
Sure. Yeah, a big part of my process is breathing, right? I think, people do the in all sports, take a deep breath in and out, right? So that's something that I do as I walk into the station, take a deep breath, clear whatever's in my body, anxiety, from the last station, if I had just started, whatever that may be. And then the second biggest thing I do is visualization, visualizing where those targets are going, what they're doing, visualizing them break. And
Like, you
it's,
literally will visualize the whole process in your mind, or is it like a fast forward, or is it a in time, visualization? Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like an in time. So if I were to walk you through, I step in the station, take a deep breath, put the shells in my gun. I look up and I visualize the line of the target. Maybe I was, I had just viewed the pair, I was watching people shoot, but regardless, visualize the line of the target and then the second target. And what I'll do sometimes too is I'll actually like be saying pull in my head and I have my finger on the trigger. So I'm getting my timing right as I'm shooting. And I think you probably actually saw me do that a little bit during the super final. Like I would take my deep breath right before I called for the Helice bird. I would shoot, and then you probably saw my body turn to go like visualize shooting that second target. And I
Yeah.
think if I can visualize what I want to do, what that shot looks like before I shoot it, all I have to do is the same thing I just did in my head, right? So as long as I can stick to that, just being repetitive and being consistent, that's something that really helps.
How do you prepare for a target like Helice where you can't prepare for what's
Mhm.
coming out? What's your process for that?
Yeah, so um, the super final that we shot, and for those of you who are listening or watching and you don't know, the super final was kind of make or break style. They threw the Helice target as the one bird, but the caveat was that you didn't have to kill it within the ring. The cap did not have to fall in the ring, so you had more time. In the super final specifically, I told myself that I had more time and to be patient, to see the target, to move slow, even though that, there's still the variable that it could do whatever it wants to do. But my main thing was to just tell myself to relax, to be slow and smooth. That's what I was telling myself on every shot. And then, if you're shooting Helice normally, it's kind of the same thing, honestly. You don't want to be too quick, but it's always something visual with me, like let my eyes float, see the target before I move. That's something I say to myself a lot.
Sorry, did you say let your eyes float or flow?
Float and flow, honestly, but just
Okay.
float over the Helice trap in the middle. Just kind of let them float over the top, kind of that soft focus visual that a lot of people have, just, kind of staring out there, and then you see the movement and go.
Got it. Got it.
Mhm.
Got it. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you train alone when you're training?
I do now.
Okay.
I just got a easy pull with a voice remote, so I can train alone and pull everything that I want to at Northbrook. But typically, I've got a couple of guys that I shoot with at the club here, that are also students of my coach, Steve Schultz.
Okay.
And we work together just because we shoot the same ways, or we do that thing. But when I was younger, one of my parents would come out and they would pull for me for a little while. But Now with the voice remote, I can go out and just be alone, be peaceful, work on things, and not be, um, not that I get embarrassed, but not have the other guy next to you that if, like you can really work on stuff
What you have
alone.
to work
You know what
on.
I mean? Right,
Right.
right.
You mentioned peaceful, and I honed in on that. That I would describe that as your being, if you will. Like when you're out there, you're very calm. Nothing seems to phase you. Like, is that, something that you work on to be peaceful and calm? And I don't want to say methodical. You're not robotic. You're just very calm. I mean, that's just the best way
Yeah.
to put it. So,
Yeah, I have a lot of people actually say that to me. Like they can't really tell the difference when I miss or when I hit a
right.
target. Um, quite honestly, I think it all comes down to like even at a professional level, like we shoot clay targets for a living, like a flying disc that explodes in the sky, like that's what we do, right? And even though there's a lot of pressure that comes with that and there's money involved and it's a livelihood, totally understand that. At the end of the day, that's what we're doing. So
It's a,
like
yeah, inconsequential kind of thing, right?
and not to be like arrogant about it or anything, but like it's not that deep. You
Right.
know what I mean? So
Right.
um
I try to make it deeper than it is, but you're right. You're
no, no,
100%.
and I don't mean that against
Yeah.
you, but I'm just saying, like, you miss a target and maybe you've been shooting good the entire round. There's
Yeah.
no reason to beat yourself up because you can't
Right.
expect everybody else out on the field to run the course. And
Yeah.
that's a lot of the expectation part. Like, you get mad at that one target, that can screw you for the rest of the round. I mean, how
Absolutely.
many times maybe has that happened to yourself or to
All
other
the
people,
time.
right?
Yeah,
Um,
no, and you're right. You're 100% right about it. What I mean by me saying I try to make it deeper than it is, I remember when I first got into shooting and just using an anecdotal story, I didn't know anything about it. And all I
mhm,
did was look at the bird and shoot the bird. And I did
mhm,
well, relatively speaking, for being a beginner. And then the more I started learning about it, the more I started putting emphasis on all these different things. And I went through a little bit of a dip in my
sure.
performance until I got that foundation built for the fundamentals and then just started just shooting the target again and
Yeah.
just being a little
Yep.
bit more
Yep.
precise about it. But um, you're right in the sense that it's not as complex as it needs to be. I
Yeah.
think a lot of
Right.
people put a lot of things into it. The rabbit hole can go really deep. But at
Right.
the end of the day, we're just
Right.
shooting clay targets in the sky. So get to it and shoot it.
Yeah. And I think that I get as mad as anybody does, I'm sure.
Come on,
No,
Grayson, you
seriously.
don't get mad. I can't see you getting mad.
But that's kind of the point is like I know that especially as an upcoming professional that I have the next generation and I have other people watching and I need to
Okay.
set an example for those people. So throwing my shells in the bucket and swearing and cussing and putting my gun aggressively in the rack or something, that's probably not the best example to set.
Yeah.
And not to mention that that doesn't change anything that just happened. I literally, once I miss a target or hit a target, I cannot change what just happened. All
Right.
that I can do is learn from it and shoot the next target. So
Right.
that's what I kind of mean by it's not that deep. It's just I feel like I have an obligation to set an example and to be, a calm person who just kind of goes with the flow. But
Yeah.
I am just as passionate as everybody else, if not more sometimes, and I get just as aggressive, if not more than some people, but I just don't want to show it.
Have you ever had a crash out where you're like, Grayson, what are you doing? And just curse yourself out or
Probably, yeah, I think I definitely have. Actually, now that I have the voice remote and I can shoot by myself, I don't have somebody there, so sometimes I'll get a little bit more mad.
no, I think everything you said, man, is very wise. Again, for especially someone who's 22 years old. Not to knock anyone who's in their 20s, but
Yeah,
I
thank you.
remember feeling like I was an adult when I was 20 something, but you're really not. No offense. Um, when it comes to your coaching and do you ever use video for your coaching,
When I'm giving a lesson, like to show
or
them.
or not for your coaching, but your own training? Sorry.
Oh, sure. Yeah, not as much as I used to. When I was working on my mount and things like
Mhm.
that for FITASC or whatever that be, I would have one of my parents or somebody else take a video of me when I'm training or during a tournament just to see, if everything mechanically looked good. Um, I don't use video as much anymore, but sometimes if somebody takes a video, and there's something that I can catch, I will use that.
Okay.
Hmm.
We were talking a little bit about mental game, but I kind of want to touch on something that I read about you and dive into this a little bit deeper, if you don't mind, and that's
Sure.
your faith.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you reference Romans 8:28 as what your guiding scripture.
Hmm.
And for those that don't know, do you know it or can you share
I
it?
do. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So Romans 8:28 has been a big family verse for us. It reads, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him and have been called according to His purpose." And I think the last part for me is probably the most impactful. It's the most impactful part about that verse, who have been called according to his purpose. I grew up in a Christian household. I'm still in a Christian household, went to Christian school. I was always surrounded by faithful people and by God. So I was very fortunate to have that. And, nothing against other people that haven't grown up in that, but I was. So I was
Yeah.
always surrounded by it. And the more that I have competed, the more that I have shot professionally, I've started to see that purpose play out a little bit more. And I believe that I believe that everybody's made in the image of God and that everybody has that divine purpose, something that they, were made for, that God has a plan for in their life. And that's been really important for me. And, some of those really low spots in my life, whether that be in shooting or not, just to kind of center myself a little bit more on God and on that purpose that He's planned out for me.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been a huge influence on your approach to shooting and handling pressure. Have you learned like humility and gratitude through that, or through competition, or a combination of both, or does it translate to each other?
Yeah, I think it kind of all stems back to my relationship with God and then also my parents. I mean, a lot of who I am today is, built on the foundation of my dad and my mom. So,
Mhm.
and they're Christians and they have a very strong faith. So it definitely stems up to that. Um, But I think, you talk about humility and gratitude, that mainly came from my parents. But like I said, that just all kind of stems up to God. He calls us to be humble and to love each other and to be grateful for the things that we have. Um, so I try to apply that into competitions wherever I can.
No, that's great. So you integrate faith, do you integrate it into your daily training and maybe like before an event or your routine?
Mhm. I do, yeah. I try to keep prayer, at the forefront of my mind, whether that be um, before a round or during. I mean, the Bible calls us to be praying continually and without ceasing. And I a lot of times just pray when I feel like I need it,
Mhm.
which a lot of people do. Like you get in that hard time and then you got to ask God for something, right? But I found more recently and as I mature and as I get older, especially this year, that continually, being in a relationship with God throughout a 100 target main event or something like that, or just, during a normal walk during my day, just praying, asking Him, bringing Him into my life has really helped me as a Christian, helped me as a man, and for sure as a competitor.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up Christian. I wouldn't say I'm a practitioner or follower anymore,
Hmm.
and not knocking anything about religion. In fact, I think there's a huge benefit
Hmm.
for humankind around religion and their belief systems.
Right.
And I find that a lot of athletes find strength in their faith,
Hmm.
whatever it is, whatever religion it is, or whatever thing
Hmm.
that they have. Just having that faith is a big driver for
Yeah.
their success in what they do. And it's that intangible thing that I think a lot of people, you can't train that, right? Well,
No, no,
yeah. Or maybe
no,
you
you
can.
can't.
Maybe through prayer you can, right? Because I think
Yeah.
prayer is like a meditative thing, and like you
Mhm.
said, you only do it at times when you need it, rather than just doing it consistently.
Right.
That probably translate into a lot of other things that you do as an athlete.
For sure, for sure. And I think something recently that's been more on my heart in my competing is that everything that I do, shouldn't be a reflection to make me better, to make me put me on this pedestal. I'm that guy, the best shooter in the world, or anything like that. That may come, that may happen, and that's why we're shooting. But at the end of the day, it's to bring glory to God and to put Him up on that pedestal.
Mm,
And I think that, like I talked about, being a good example for younger generations and people around me, that's kind of where that humility comes in because I'm not shooting for myself. I'm more shooting for God, right? So
sure.
it's not necessarily about me, even though I'm the vessel that maybe brings that through.
Interesting. No,
Yeah,
I can see that point. Yeah, that's good. When you miss a target or fall short of your expectations, how do you reset and find the perspective that you're looking for? Because you just kind of touched on that, but like,
sure.
how does that relate to your faith and your religion, when missing? Like are you having a conversation with God about that and trying to find the lesson in it, or what's your approach?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times there's not time to go through the whole thing and really
Yeah,
figure out all of what just happened, right? Sometimes that happens more in between stations or after a round where I'm actually, thinking
debriefing.
about that or sometimes
Yeah,
praying about that. But, when I miss, sometimes it's a really obvious thing that you did. Just let, everybody knows that, oh, you were just behind it or you didn't move the gun quick enough, whatever that may be. Um, but I always have a plan going into a certain pair, a certain shot before I shoot it. That's just part of pre-shot routine, which a lot of people have as well. And, if it's something as simple as I did not follow that plan, then I just go back to my process, go back to my plan and shoot it that way, right? But like I said, sometimes it's just as simple as you need to put another foot on it. So,
right,
I do that. But definitely, if I find myself battling mentally more than technically during a round, that's when I will integrate my faith more into that to kind of bring me back down, to calm me, to set me on, a straighter path for the next day, for the next station, whatever that may be.
hmm
Hmm.
okay, interesting. Now, what other thing that I found pretty interesting about you? You're 22, but you started a business. Is that right?
That's correct.
Can,
Yep.
can you tell us a little bit about your business?
Sure. Yeah. So I work for a company called Payrock, but I own my own agency within Payrock. So I have my own business under them. And
It's funny. I just recently heard about Payrock. Isn't it?
Payrock,
It's merchant processing, right?
correct. Yep. Credit card
Okay.
processing, merchant processing, financial technology is the industry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
My parents actually started two businesses, not with Payrock, but previously. And one of them, the latest one, Integrity Payment Systems, got acquired by Payrock. And
Okay.
so most of the employees that were with Integrity are now in Payrock. And it's actually cool because it's a lot of the people that I grew up walking around in the office in a diaper, they were, playing with and stuff. So
Yeah.
I am now working with all those people that I used to know as a kid, which is really cool. But yeah, we offer financial technology solutions for specifically credit card processing. So we work directly with banks and with all the financial sectors, like for POS systems, for online gateways, website integration, physical terminals. And I've kind of incorporated that into the shooting industry as well, because like I process for Kolar Arms, they're one of my
Okay.
merchants, and many others. I'm just trying to grow the business, but they're kind of going hand in hand for me because the bigger my name gets in shooting, the more I'm winning, the more contacts, the more networking I'm able to do to grow Payrock as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I'm a banker. I don't know if I mentioned that to you, but
Yeah.
I'm on the commercial lending side. So I lend to
Okay.
companies, and so we utilize products and solutions like merchant processing
Sure.
when we're working with our clients and managing their cash flow. And it sounds like it's kind of a family business as well. Like your family started in the merchant side of it or the payments solution side of it, and then you continued on and built your own agency with it.
Correct. Yeah. So, even though it technically was like a family-built business, Payrock right now is the fourth largest non-bank processor in the country right now.
Right.
So we're huge,
Like
right?
First Data, Elevon, you
Correct. Yeah.
guys, and some other ones I
Yep.
can't remember the names, but yeah.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
right up there with everybody else. And, we're uniquely positioned as a credit card processor because everything that we do is in-house. So we don't outsource any departments that we have.
Mm,
Our deployment, customer service, risk management, underwriting, whatever it is all Payrock. So
gotcha.
it's good for merchants, especially in the outdoor sector or dealing with firearms and things like that, because we will take, those gun sales businesses and stuff like that because we handle all the risk ourselves and we really can help them out. And also, it provides a peace of mind for merchants as well because we're the only ones that are handling their money. We're not
Mm,
working as a middleman per se to move their money over here to the bank to this and that. It's all a Payrock solution. So it's a good opportunity. It's very flexible for me because it's pretty much all remote sales. Even when I'm at a tournament, I'm selling, I'm networking, right? So
yeah,
I do get some tax benefits for that as well. But it's nice. It works very well.
that's great.
Yeah.
Do you see any parallels between your business life and shooting? Aside from the networking that you're doing, but like in
Mhm.
terms of like training and thinking about it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I always have to be, quick on my feet and learning new things in the payment industry because technology is always evolving, right?
Yeah.
We're always coming out with new products and I'm always talking to new people and sales and stuff. So when I translate that over to shooting, like I have to be continually learning, right? Our game is always growing, just in the sport, but also my game personally. I'm always finding out new things about how I move the shotgun and how I break targets. So um, learning new things and then also just meeting new people and networking and just trying to be a good person, I think is hand in hand in both of those businesses.
Big time. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that too.
And especially on the shooting side when I'm coaching as well, because I do give lessons quite a bit here at Northbrook and at some other places. So, I'm marketing myself, I'm marketing my business and learning how to pitch myself, pitch my techniques and things the same way that I would be selling my actual products with Payrock.
Yeah, speaking of coaching, you're a registered NSCA instructor, right?
Hmm.
And then also certified with Target Line Shooting School.
Correct.
Can you
Yep.
can you tell us a little bit about I don't know anything about Target Line. What
Yeah.
what is Target Line Shooting School?
Yeah. So Target Line was founded by Steve Schultz. A lot of the people who have been in the sporting clays community would know that name. I think you've heard of Steve as
Yeah,
well.
so he's the guy who is Gavin Miles' coach, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. So Steve actually shot the very first sporting clays event that ever happened in the United States when it came over from England. They held the first tournament down in Texas, I believe it was somewhere, and he shot that, and he then met his coach who was from England, and then just kind of started branching out.
Who is his coach?
Um, Gosh, what was his name? Um, I don't remember his first name. I believe his last name is Churchill. Not
Okay.
that Churchill,
Yeah,
but
not EJ.
yeah, the famous, yeah. Um, but he just kind of then, immersed himself into the community, started teaching other people, shooting competitively himself, and then Gebben is for sure his most notable student, right, that he's worked with for the longest amount of time and helped him the most. But him and I got together. He had a little clinic that he does about 3 times a year here at Northbrook, and this is back when I was on the teams for SCTP. My dad saw on the Northbrook website that there's a guy coming in to shoot or to coach for Sporting Clays and FITASC, so he was like, "Yeah, we'll book a lesson for you." So I had a couple hours with him, and then since then, Steve kind of saw the values in me and my talent, obviously, and we've taken that now for almost 7 years now. So just about everything that I know about how to actually move a shotgun and how to actually shoot targets has come from him.
What were some of your like takeaways like initially? Like you've been shooting already before that, but now that you
Mhm.
connected with Steve, what did he teach you that was like that aha moment?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I took my hunting skills and stuff right into shooting. It was just shooting targets, and then I found some things out. And of course, I had coaches on my team, right? But they can only take you so far as like a big competitor. And then as soon as I had that lesson with him, my perspective was changed a lot in that there's way more to the game than I thought there was.
Right.
It's a lot different than hold point, break point, and soft focus or something. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? There's all these little nuances and things that you can continually be learning. I remember one of the biggest takeaways I had from that very first lesson was something that Steve calls watching impact. It's essentially just watching the target break, which a lot of shooters use. On whether that be a report pair or a true pair, you watch that first target break and let your eyes then pick up the second one instead of going to look for it, right? And that's something that I now teach as well, and that I have to continually remind myself, even though I've been learning that for 7 years now.
I've heard this before too. Like Zach says, see it late, watch it break.
Yeah.
So a lot of other coaches have said similar things. What does that mean for you? Like when you're seeing it
Hmm.
break,
Hmm.
are you letting your hard focus come down on it and then go back to a soft focus so that you can pick up the next target, or what does that mean
Yeah,
for you?
kind of. So I think seeing the target break is kind of the vessel or the easiest way to say that when you're teaching it. But what's really going on is if I were to say this, so if you're looking at a single target, the first target, right, and you look right at the trap, right on the arm, right, for that target, you're gonna see it, but
Mhm.
you're not gonna see it clearly until a
Right.
certain point, right? You're just gonna see flash. Okay. But if you move your eyes off of that a little bit, right, you may see the flash first and then you lock onto it. Okay. And that's all done in our peripheral vision. So
Right.
when we shoot a pair and we shoot that first target, I don't want to move my eyes and my gun off of it to go look for the second target. I want that wherever that's coming from to come in my peripheral in my soft focus so
Right.
then I can move it to hard focus.
I
And
see.
just
Yeah.
and a lot of times watching that first target break is a way to discipline ourselves and to keep our eyes on something so that we
Hmm.
can see that second target.
Hmm. What if it's a presentation where it's not going to be crossing paths? And I know what you're talking about because you're talking about periphery vision versus central vision
Right.
and allowing your periphery to pick up speed and angle because that's
Hmm.
what it's designed to do. And then locking in on it syncs up your hand-eye coordination. But
Yeah.
what if you're shooting a pair that are not connected, right?
Yep.
And you're seeing that one break, and now you have to shift your focus over to the other
Sure.
side.
Sure.
How do you go from periphery central and then periphery central, or are you like what's your process for that, I guess?
Yeah, so if I'm making a big transition, high, low, left, right,
Yeah.
whatever that may be, I'll break that first target and I'll keep my eyes over the gun the whole time so that I'm focused straight over my gun so
Hmm.
that I can then pick that up peripherally. Or if I have to make a huge movement, maybe it's a crosser and then like a kind of a quartering trap shot, right? Where there's not a whole lot going on over here. I will come to a second hold point with my eyes right over the gun, still trying to see that peripherally, if that
Got it.
makes
Got
sense.
it.
Yeah.
Yep, totally makes sense.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's such the hardest thing to do consistently.
Yeah.
There's times where I feel like that's all I'm doing, and then there's times where I just can't get that to work for me for the life of me for some reason.
Right. Right.
And so you've mentioned that, these last 7 years you've been kind of trying to do that and focus on it. Obviously you've been doing it at a high level.
Hmm.
What does that type of training look like? Is it being conscious about it, or is it the reps that you talked about earlier of where this is what it's supposed to look like to me, and this is like I'm training my body
Yeah.
to kind of do that motion
Sure. Yeah. I think a lot of times, so that's something that comes naturally.
for you?
Like,
Okay.
no, not for me. I mean, for shooters in general. Like,
Okay.
you shoot the first target and then an object appears, you see the object, you shoot the object, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of a natural thing. It's soft focus, hard focus, it's peripheral vision. We do it when we drive, right? That's kind
Right.
of what that
Right.
is. So, that's a natural thing. But when you add pressure into it, you want to break the first target and you want to shoot the second one. Okay.
Yeah.
So you saw what I just did there. You shoot this one and then you look and you try and
Right.
find it, right? So when you add pressure of, big tournament or small tournament, you want to break these targets. Sometimes that slips. And I find that happening more, like I just said, when I'm in a tournament more than when I'm practicing.
Hmm.
But I've been working on being very disciplined. I talked about being disciplined mentally, but also with my eyes of when that pressure sets in to do what I told myself to keep my eyes on that first target or, to my secondary hold point. Um, and that's why sometimes going into a big tournament, I'll shoot for score because even though it's not for a title or anything like that, I'm trying to shoot the best score I can in practice. So that adds a little bit of pressure, not quite as much as I would get if I'm shooting nationals, obviously, but it's a little bit so that I can find myself slip. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
on the last couple of pairs, and that even just comes from when you're trying to run a station. You smoke the first two pairs, and then the last one, you want to break the last pair so you don't do what you did on the first
Mhm.
two. And it's usually a visual thing, at least for me.
No, I think you're spot on, man. And I
Yeah.
think that's a huge insight that you just shared right there,
Hmm.
And I feel like a lot of people kind of, will understand that and acknowledge it and understand, but it's just the hardest part to kind of keep consistent.
For
So
sure.
it sounds like what you're doing is just constant reminders of yourself of that.
Yeah.
And trying to keep in that mindset of just
Hmm.
look at it correctly. I think a
Yeah.
lot of the good shooters that I've talked to, they just know how to look at the target, when to look at the target.
Sure.
One thing I know I don't do well is set my second hold point, a
Okay.
visual hold point.
Yep.
I don't ever do that actually. If I'm really thinking about it, I set my
Yeah.
first one and then I go searching for the second one.
Right,
And that's
right.
probably why my scores aren't consistent.
And
So
that's kind of that part. When I do it really well, when I'm watching impact really well or being disciplined with my eyes, I find that most of my misses would be the first bird, and almost every time I'm hitting in the 90%, 85% of my second targets. That's just because I'm being disciplined with my eyes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you explained that really well. What do you love about coaching?
You know, I kind of got my love from for coaching by being coached, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
From Steve and then from my coaches who I respected greatly back on my SCTP team. Steve always explained it to me. It's one of the more noble things that you can do in life to have skills to obtain knowledge and then to pass that on to other people.
Totally agree.
And that goes for whatever you do, not just
Absolutely.
shooting, right? You have certain knowledge and you want to give that to the next generation or just pass that on. And I
It
really
doesn't even have to be generationally, right? I mean,
no, not at all.
coach up to the generation above you too,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so I just really like that. I have things that work for me and I want to meet my students or, whoever that may be where they are and apply the things that I know into them. I don't usually like to change the way they shoot unless I feel that's warranted, but I just like passing that knowledge and then seeing them grow as a person, seeing those little moments of excitement, like where they're trying to break the same true pair and they keep missing the second bird. And I'm like, hey, watch the first target break. And then it works. And they're like, wow, that was cool. Something like that.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's just those little moments. I like meeting new people. I like working with them.
When you're teaching, how do you balance the technical side of the instruction with the mental side of it?
Yeah. So I think, I've taken a lesson from Gebben, mainly just from Steve, and being a competitor, like an active competitor shooting all the major tournaments, gives you an edge against other coaches who aren't, right? Because we're dealing with all this pressure, we're shooting at a high level, so we can add those mental um, lessons in while we're coaching. But I think I also have a unique opportunity because I'm trying to come up in the world in
Mhm.
in the ranks so that I can be a little bit more honest with my students because I'm not like that guy. You know
Right,
what I mean?
right.
Right?
Yeah, so
So
your
I
failures are now your lessons for you and your
exactly,
students. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I can explain to them the struggles that I had because not that long ago I may have been in the exact same shoes that they were. You know what I
right,
mean? And I'm not the world champion that everybody looks up to.
right.
Hopefully one day I am. But I've started to be more honest, sharing some struggles that I've had in past tournaments and being like, look, I know you may want to do something the way that you're doing it now, but I'm telling you, I tried to do it that way, right? And it didn't work out. This is what happened. Now this is what I'm doing. So
Mhm.
that's all mental, really. I mean, sometimes that applies to a certain technical aspect, but just being honest with them and telling them to be honest with themselves has been a very big part of my lessons recently of, telling them to be more disciplined with what they're thinking, pay attention to their thoughts as they're shooting their last couple of pairs or going into a station, have that plan set out, and just try to build consistency. Because I've seen a lot of shooters, they don't build that plan, and their timing on the first pair is way different than their second, different than their third, their fourth. And I tell them that, if you step into the station and you're that guy, which I hear all the time, I always break my first pair, but then I can never do it on the next ones, right?
That's
And I
me.
watch them shoot, and it's like the first pair looked nothing like the second, third, or fourth pair. And I tell them, if you expect yourself to do what you did on the first pair for the rest of the station, you might as well do the same thing. You know what I mean? Like it's a
Right.
very simple topic, but it's easy to fall out of. And so building that consistency, having that plan, a little bit of mental process, making sure their hold points are on the same spots, they're breaking it in the same place. Those are things that I probably focus on in just about every lesson, no matter the skill of the person I'm coaching.
Hmm. That's good advice. Do you think being a younger coach gives you a different perspective or connection with your students compared to the, maybe older ones?
I think it can. I think I can cater more to the younger crowd because I am younger. but then also because I'm a little bit more mature, I can, cater up to like I have multiple guys that I coach who are in their 70s or 80s here at Northbrook, and I relate to them very well too. So I'm kind of like sitting in the middle,
Yeah.
Um, but for the kids that I coach on the SCTP teams or just younger shooters in general, they open up much more to me than they would with the old grouchy coach who's on their team. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I definitely get more out of them and I can help them a lot more. And not to mention that, like I just said, 5 years ago, I was doing exactly what they're doing. I
Hmm.
was trying to come up through the SCTP. I know all about it, so I can share that with them.
Hmm. Now you've been shooting for Team Kolar since you first started in your professional career, right?
Yeah, when would that have been? That was last year. I was officially on Team Kolar. I have been shooting Kolar since I was in the SCTP, but I was never officially on the team as one of their team members until
Okay.
last year. Yeah, so
Okay.
this is my second season with them.
I saw your Kohler Max Clay's gun, which was a beautiful gun.
Yeah.
What have you done to it to kind of make it yours?
Yeah, I specifically for like the engraving, you notice it's like real dark black
Yeah.
receiver. My dad actually got a gun from Kohler before I got this gun,
Okay.
and him and I always liked like that dark matte look. I mean, you can see all the walls behind me are
Yeah.
black, right? So, we don't like the flashy look of things. So we both did a engraving package. Their select engraving, but with black Cerakote on top of it instead of just bluing. So it's real deep and dark. And that's something that they've only done a couple. I think it's like we have two of three guns that they've done that have been that color. So
Yeah, I'm looking at a
kind
picture
of,
over to my right on it, and it's a beautiful gun. I mean,
thank you.
Sean, if you're listening, you gotta make more of those. That's a beautiful looking color. And you got the round body one?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
And you
So
shoot the Max Clays is the flat rib.
the flat rib, yeah, not the
Okay.
ramp taper, the true
Right.
flat rib. And actually, when I was shooting in the SCTP, my freshman year of high school, I got a Kohler. It was it was the Max Sporting Clays combo, so it was the adjustable
Okay.
combo with the high rib, right?
Right.
And I had a carrier barrel, I had an unsingle for trap, I had all the tools and stuff. I actually just sold that gun to a lovely family who's in the SATP now, so hopefully they're going to win a lot more championships with that. But yeah, Kohler. I've always loved Kohler. Uniquely for me, I'm 35 minutes from the factory.
Oh, really?
I was up there 2 days ago, just hanging out with Sean and the guys, getting some things done. So that was always a big selling point for me,
Yeah.
especially when I was in the SCTP of, hey, there's a problem, I can go drive and get it fixed,
Right.
or
Right.
if I,
Oh, that's
whatever that may
huge.
be.
That's huge.
Yeah, instead of shipping my gun
Northbrook
off.
and Kohler right in your backyard. I mean, you're loving life.
I'm telling you, Illinois is not as bad as people think it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've been great in that aspect, and I really believe that anybody who's in the North Central region should at least give Kohler a shot. I mean, not everybody's going to shoot one well, and they're not the gun for everybody. Some people like other manufacturers, and I'll be the first to say that, but give them a shot because they're right here.
Well, I'll tell you this. I don't usually promote any manufacturers or anything like that. I
Mhm.
shot a Kohler for many years. I loved my Kohler, and they are honestly some of the best people that I've bumped into.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of good people in the industry, but
Yeah.
I was a nobody. I didn't even buy my gun new, but Sean treated me like I was a professional shooter.
Mhm.
Utmost, responsiveness. Always took my
Absolutely.
calls, answered any questions I had. The gunsmiths were always just awesome to work with, and I just always had good experiences with them. They're really solid people, and I really enjoy my gun. I still have it.
Yeah.
It's a 9.5 pound gun, and that's just by the makeup of what I had set up.
Yep.
Shot that really well for a long time. I shoot a lot of other disciplines too, so having a
Sure.
heavier gun sometimes is a benefit.
Hmm.
But recently I switched to a lighter Krieghoff, and I love my Krieghoff as well. They're, like I said, a lot of
Yeah.
these guns, the Perazzis, the Krieghoffs, the Kohlers, they're all great guns. Let's just be honest,
Absolutely.
right? It's just finding the one that kind of feels and resonates with you. And one of the big lessons I learned going from both manufacturers, it has nothing to do with the manufacturer, it just has to do with how that gun feels in your hands.
Sure.
And as a newer person kind of getting into it, my going from my 9.5 pound Kohler to my 8.5 pound Krieghoff, what I realized for my shooting style, I prefer a lighter gun. Do you know, like, did you focus on that or know the like what your balance and weight and all that stuff was, or is that something that just off the bat you were set?
Yeah, it off the bat kind of worked out with the way that they built my gun. But right now, I've been actually taking length off of my stock.
Okay.
Beginning of this year and prior to that, I had worked my old Kohler up to about 16 inches length of pull.
Oh, oh,
Yeah,
really?
that's the reaction I get from a lot of
That's
people.
crazy, dude. I was
And
gonna
I'm not a
say.
big guy at all. I'm like 5'11". I'm like 165, right? So it's not like I need some crazy gun, but I used to be really, really thin, and I'm not like that bulked up now, but I was very thin in high school and stuff. So I think I needed just a little bit extra.
Yeah,
And the way that I shoot, I don't really bury my head at all. As soon as the gun is touching my cheek, that's when I'm shooting. So
right.
I naturally shoot a little bit of a higher POI, and having that length kind of just fit. It worked like that. And recently, even though I shot really well with that length of pull earlier this year, I've been decreasing it, and I'm actually down to 15 now. I just cut
Okay.
my stock with them a little bit ago, a couple days ago, and I'm just noting that it's more consistent. The days that I am struggling a little bit in my mount, it just doesn't feel right. I'm
Mhm.
much better than I was when I had this really long stock.
And you're
So,
still you're still bringing it up and just touching it.
correct.
You're
Yeah.
not getting into the gun with your head and neck
Correct.
and okay.
Yep, yeah. And sometimes, I'm still into the gun, I'm still down, but it's just a light touch. I don't want to change my point of impact or mess with my eyes too much. That's just part of my shooting. But I think I'm somewhere right around the 9 pound mark now, maybe
Okay.
a touch below that because I've been taking off this wood and it's balanced right in the middle. It just shoots really well for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
They're great guns.
they are.
When you're looking down your barrel over your barrel, do you
Hmm.
see a gap between your beads? Do you have beads? What's
So
your
I
setup?
don't have a middle bead.
Okay.
What I did is I took a middle bead and put it on my front bead
Right.
because most guns, Kohlers especially, they have like a little bit of a bigger white bead that goes on the front, or
Right.
you can get a different color one. But I just like the smaller profile because I don't look at my bead. I mean, we look at the target, right? So I wanted just to not have a lot of visual interruption up there.
Yeah.
But now that I've been changing my stock around a little bit, I've been patterning it and I shoot about 80/20 with how it is now. And if I were to just put my head down a little bit more, I could get it to flat, but that's just how I shoot.
So
A little
are
higher.
you floating targets? Like, if the target's here, is your barrel here while you're tracking it, or are you like up on the bottom, or the like where are you when you're?
You know,
Is that something you even think about? I'm
no,
overthinking
not
this now.
really. I do not see myself floating targets, if
Okay.
that makes sense. It's
Yeah.
just because of I've learned how to shoot this way for so long that I don't actually see like or consciously go, I have to shoot 3 feet under that crosser, right?
Hmm.
Um, if you were to stand behind me and watch, you would probably notice that maybe I'm a little bit lower than someone who's shooting flat is, you
Yeah.
know? But a lot of that of how we shoot is, and this is all from things I've learned from Steve, is I shoot a lot of collapsing lead. I shoot a lot of like efficient gun movement shots. So there's
Right.
not a lot of dragging or coming from behind targets, things like that. So we do that because of our light gun mounts and having the light gun mount like that, not a lot of cheek pressure. It to us it doesn't look like we are floating that target, but maybe if
Because
you
you're, well,
actually,
yeah, I totally get what you're saying. What you're saying is
yeah.
you've got the gun up to your face and you're watching it kind of come into your gun. So it's not a sight picture you're necessarily seeing. You're kind of seeing the target come into where your eyes are looking.
Right, right.
That
Yeah.
am I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
Yeah, no,
that sound right?
that's pretty close. Yeah. And
Okay.
actually I put a shot cam on my gun and it looks the same as if anybody else did.
Okay.
It's just how I see the target. I think if you put a middle bead in my gun, you would maybe see a little bit of a gap.
Yeah.
Um, and depending on the shot, if I got to get a little bit more aggressive with the shot. Sometimes I do get into it a little bit more for those quick, trappy quartering shots, and I'll probably wind up at a little bit of a lower point of impact. But for FITASC specifically, like long targets that develop, I'm much more relaxed as soon as the gun touches my face. So I will be shooting a little higher there.
That trust thing is something that I personally struggle with a lot. And I end up, and I'm having a realization talking to you about this, where when I shoot really well, I'm not looking at the
Mhm.
beat at all. I
Yeah.
mean, I know it's there. I know
Right.
I'm looking down my gun. Obviously, my right eye is over it and all that, but I'm pretty focused on the target. And then when I get a little nervous, and arguably, I got a little nervous at the Coonpecker Open,
Hmm.
and I found myself barrel checking a lot,
Okay. Yeah.
and and trying to figure out what that line was and where this should be relative to the
Sure.
target. And I think that's what messed me up quite a bit, to be honest. And I tend to go through that when I don't trust myself or feel like
Mhm.
there's an issue there. And so what I've been trying to do, and when I do it well, I shoot well. Um, when you're dealing with a student like me, for example, who's
Mhm.
struggling with that, and you're seeing them struggle with that, what's your best advice for them?
Yeah, I think, like you said, that comes a lot with pressure because maybe when you're practicing yourself that, you don't
Not a
barrel
care in
check.
the world. I could shoot
You're
everything like
just
as if I'm
shooting.
the world champion of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, right, right. So I think before I work on anything technically with that shooter, I try to just bring them back down, just be like, dude, we're just here to learn. You know what I mean? Like, just look at the target. I want you to focus and see detail on that target and just be smooth. Don't worry about lead, anything like that. And usually after I say that in the next couple of shots, they'll get it and they'll get back on track. Um, but sometimes there's a technical issue that, they're just ramped up because they're in a lesson, they want to perform for me, that's not getting through to them. And like me personally, I don't come from behind a lot of targets or I don't pull away from a lot of targets. That's just me. I do come from behind certain shots or there's only a couple things that I would pull away from. But generally I shoot a lot of collapsing lead,
Okay.
some sustained lead. And then I'll come from behind targets because of how I'm moving my gun and where I'm starting my hands, it doesn't feel like I'm not watching it past me and I'm coming through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if I have that person that maybe is shooting swing through lead or they are shooting pull away, sometimes what can happen when you do that is you're trying to make sure that target passes you and you're trying to make sure you come through it, right? Or
Hmm.
with pull away, you're trying to start on a gap and you're trying to stretch, right? So sometimes I'll switch their method of shooting, have them move out a little bit more, move the gun a little bit slower, look at the target, and kind of shoot more of a sustainer collapse. And usually that will work if the first kind of mental part doesn't.
No, that's really good, man. I totally see what you mean. It's one of those things where, depending on the shooter, one
Absolutely.
technique or style is going to work better for them because of how they see the bird barrel relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're touching on, right? So if you're seeing
Right.
the swing through, the pull away, the typical ones that work for somebody else, not working for this one person, you're switching them up into what is
Right.
collapsing or maintain lead or
Right.
sustain.
And I'll say this, at all do I think, or not at all do I think that my way or
Of
my way of
course, yeah,
shooting is the best, right? Because if it was, then everybody would be doing it.
right,
But there's
right,
not a lot of people like Gavin and Karen and I shoot very, very similar because we were all coached by Steve. But there's not a lot of people that really shoot like us. I mean, I guess
yeah.
Wendell, Todd, some of them, they shoot more sustained leads. So that's
Hmm.
kind of similar.
Hmm.
But I mean, some of the greatest shooters in the world right now come from behind every single target, or
Right,
or they get really close to coming from behind. So, all power to everybody. Every technique works, but I
yeah,
just like the way that I shoot. And sometimes I got to change too, and get out of my comfort zone. So.
right, right. Do you practice the other techniques then?
I do.
You
Yeah,
have to.
pull away is probably the one that I practice the least. Um, Not for any specific reason. I think that might be the farthest away from how I shoot or how I've learned to shoot because I still will swing through targets
Mhm.
naturally with what Steve taught me, but I
Is
never
that
really.
because you feel like you're occluding the target when you get to it or near it?
Sometimes, yeah. So part of the reason that I don't shoot pull away personally is because everything that I've learned is it all has to do with the break point. Like everything that you do relies on the break point. That's one of the only things that you get to choose during a shot. You don't get to choose where the targets come from. You don't get to choose where you see the target, right?
Yeah,
That's the one thing that you can be like, I want to shoot that target there or there or there or there. So when I'm shooting pull away, I don't feel like I can be consistent to break it in the exact same spot. if that makes sense, because
Yep.
sometimes maybe I didn't pull away enough or I didn't do it quickly or whatever that is. And I may be butchering some of this for pull away shooters just because I don't shoot it, but that's how I feel. Whereas if I'm shooting collapse, everything works to that spot,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And I can kind of make it all happen right at the end of the shot there, or I can shoot it really early and just trust a really big lead, but it's still kind of that collapse or sustained shot. So that's just why I like it that way. And me personally, there's too many things going on in my head. If I, start at a gap and pull away or start on the bird and pull away, there's just too much for me to look at. So that's why I don't do that.
I honestly, man, I think that's the one of the best ways I've heard someone say that. So
Okay.
that's really well said. Really well
But
said.
I mean, Anthony Matarese is one of the greatest shooters of all time, and he shoots pull
Yeah.
away and a lot of stuff. So,
Yeah, no, it absolutely has nothing to do with one being better than the other. It has everything to do with what works for you and
right,
how do your eyes make the connection for that bird barrel relationship to work for your hand-eye coordination. I think
right,
that's really what it boils down to, and that's what you're saying too. So,
right.
um, what's funny is I've learned all the techniques. I've shot all the techniques. I
Hmm.
tend to not do well with pull away, but I sometimes use pull away for a dropper, like where I'll
Okay,
just
yeah,
go touch it and pull stretch.
sure,
Quartering, I'm usually swinging through. Crossers, like far crossers, I'm usually doing a maintain, sustain, collapsing type thing.
sure,
But what I found with FITASC when I do better, since the gun's out of my face, if I just watch it come into my gun as a mounting, that's usually worked for me, which is more what you're talking about, sustain, maintain, lead.
right, right.
When I remember to do that, my problem is I have a crappy memory. I never remember all the lessons I've learned, and I never implement them because I'm always constantly learning, like as if I'm a new shooter every time. But that's a whole other story, and I won't bore you with my boring training weaknesses. But let's get into some of the stuff. So you've been competing now on the full circuit for like the last couple of years, like 3 years. You said 4 years.
Yeah, 3 years. Let me see, 22. This is my fourth year now.
Okay.
Yeah.
What stands out as the most memorable or defining moment for you in that?
Yeah, I would say the first most memorable moment that I had was actually last year. I ran 100 straight at the Super Sporting at
Nice.
Providence Hill. They had a Grand Prix out there, and that was the first time that like I really saw my name like top of the leaderboard, for an
Yeah.
HOA on an event. So that was pretty cool. I would say
Was that
my
your first 100 straight?
that Yes, that was my first in competition.
Okay.
Yeah, last year. And then this year, I've actually shot a couple more. One of them was at the US Open this year at Providence Hill again. Maybe I just like the club. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I ran the first course of the main event at Providence Hill, and I finished fourth in the main event overall. So I think that's my biggest accomplishment on a major tournament scale. Being top five at a US Open, I qualified myself for the pro class for the following year
Nice.
at that shoot. So that was for major tournaments and for, like Team USA qualifying events, things like that. That's my biggest one. But I am very proud about the all around red, the win at the all around at Gary's. I'll say that. I've been
Dude,
chasing.
I honestly, that's like one of the toughest shoots I've seen. Like I went to Brett and Gary's Northbrook
Yeah,
World English, but what was that, 2019 or whatever that
yeah,
was?
19. Yep.
That was tough. But I got
Yeah,
to tell you, Gary's CPO event, the all around, that is a tough event to be good at.
yeah,
And you need to be good at everything there because you're
right.
doing, remind me here, we're doing wobble trap.
Yep.
We didn't do bunker, right? No, I didn't shoot everything,
No,
so I don't
it's
know.
pretty much
Pass,
bunker though.
yeah, it was wobble trap, Helice, FITASC, and sporting clays,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And you came out on top of that, and that was against a really, really tough, field of
Yeah.
competitors.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and
So,
I shot like you said, that was my fourth year. The first year that I shot it, there was actually harder competition there. We had Gebben and Theo Ribbs, Griffin Howe, Thomas Jacobs was there. Who else was there? Todd Hitch was there. It was kind of a crazy.
Derek,
Yeah, Derek was there. So that was a little bit harder. That was my first one, but I
yeah,
did all right in that. And then the year after I took third, and then last year I missed the super final by like one target. So this year I was coming back for vengeance and just, like you said, it's a hard tournament to be consistent in through all events because you have to. You can't just be a
Right.
good release shooter. You can't just be a good sporting shooter or trap shooter. You got to know
They're
how to
all
shoot.
very different. They're all very
Right.
different in terms of how you approach them, how you look at them, how you shoot them.
Right.
So to be able to come out on top of that amongst that field, that's saying a lot. Would you say that was your hardest earned win?
Yeah, I would say so. Especially just given that after the first day I was in second by a bit and I climbed back, shot a big one on the sporting clays, and then Derek and I were paired up for everything else. So having that back and forth competition, us going at each other a little bit and just competing was cool. So I would say, and then getting into the super final and doing as well as I did in that, that was probably the hardest earned win I've had. Yeah.
Right on. So
Yeah.
you were also shooting with Derek on the same squad
Correct. Yeah. So
for the
after the
sporting?
first day, after Trap and Helice, we got squatted together for the sporting and FITASC.
I shot just for funsies with Derek after one. I think it was a super sporting, and we were just shooting for fun or whatever it was because I wasn't part of the main all around, nor should I be. But what I noticed about Derek is he's always encouraging even his competitors. Well, did you feel that when you were competing with them?
I did, yeah. He's a very encouraging person. I never really got to know him that much. I would say him and I got to know each other a lot more at this last shoot.
Hmm.
Um, we had talked a little bit before that, but I think he recognized a little bit in me that I wasn't just like a young kid anymore. Like I was
Right.
also, I could give
Yeah.
him a run for his money and I was a competitor. So we shared a lot more time in that. We were shooting bows one afternoon and just hanging out. But it was good having that one-on-one competition for, like we were both, I was one target back going into the super final. So we were right there. That one target really didn't even matter.
Right. Right.
Um, but like he would miss a bird on feed task and then I would miss one right after and we were sitting in the cart and I was like, damn, I really wanted to hit that one. I could smell there was blood in the water, and we were both laughing and then I missed the target on the second parkour feed task and he ran the pairs and he walked over to me and just whispered blood in the water. So we were going back and forth a little bit. Um, but
No,
it
he's a
was
class
cool.
act, man. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I sense he wouldn't do anything kind of shady with the competition side of
No,
it,
not at
right?
all. And
Yeah,
I really think that he is probably the most talented all-around shooter
oh
in
yeah,
the world. I mean, he's a Olympic trap shooter, he's a
yeah,
world champion and national champion sporting
yeah,
clay shooter. He can do literally all of it. So having to beat him, that was pretty cool.
yeah. Right
Yeah.
on, man. How did you celebrate?
Right after I called my parents because they were there the couple of years before. They were there when I took third 2 years ago. So I called them right away and let them know it was a good little payout and just everything that happened there. And then I called Steve, my coach as well, because like I said, I felt that that was the very first big win that I fully HOA to shoot,
Yeah,
or was the high all
it was a
around.
huge
So.
one, man. It was like I said, it was against a really tough competitive crowd. So kudos to you on that.
Yeah, I called him and then I hung out and I actually drove home that night because I'm only 4 hours away and slept in my bed. That was my celebration.
Uh, so we've talked about a lot of your wins, but I think there's a lot of lessons from people like you who are competing at your level and think about this at your level. What are some of the more humbling situations that you've had where, like you mentioned that you shot a 50 out of 100 at one
Mhm.
in a tournament. I've had those moments too,
Yeah.
where you're just like, how the bleep, did I
Right.
end up shooting like this when I know I'm a much better shooter?
Right.
What's your, way to deal with that?
Yeah. So let me speak on this first. The single greatest humbling experience that I've had so far. Those sucked when I was shooting
Yeah.
bad scores, but that's
Yeah.
just shooting bad scores, and
Sure.
it's gotten better, right? It was at the U.S. Open this year. So first course started out. I was not on the Pro Scod rotation because I wasn't in the pro class yet, but I started out and I shot. I think it was the Beretta course, and absolutely creamed everything, and I ran that course, and that
You ran
was
the whole thing.
on the main event. Yeah, I ran one of
Right.
the 66 bird courses, so you do that and then everybody's looking at scores and stuff and then congratulations and that's incredible and you go through all those emotions after running a course at the US Open. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
huge, right? And went into the second day. and I felt a lot of pressure on the second day, but I knew how to deal with it a little bit because at Nationals last year, I think, tied for the lead after the first 2 days. And then people kept coming up to me, congratulations, keep doing well, shoot well, the whole thing. And then I fell apart on the third day. So I kind of knew how to deal with that a little bit.
What's
And
fall apart though? Define that, Grayson. I feel like your fall apart's different than other people's fall apart.
I think Nationals is a 75 bird main for one day. I think I shot like low 60s or something like that, whereas my
Okay.
other scores were like 73, 72, right? So I needed
Gotcha.
to keep
Gotcha.
that momentum.
Okay.
But the second day at the Open, I shot well as well on the Winchester course, which I think was arguably the harder course out of the three, some really big targets. Um, I think I shot a 60 on that or something like that out of 66, so that was still a good score. And I didn't want to look at scores going into the third day, which looking back on it, part of it was I had never been in that position before.
Sure.
Tied for the lead or going into it or whatever it was. But I didn't want to look at it just because I wanted to do my own thing, right? And I thought that was right. But by doing that, there was too much unknown for me,
Mm,
if that makes sense.
yeah.
I didn't know if I needed to defend the lead or if I needed to attack tomorrow, and be more aggressive and make up ground or something. It turned out I think that me and Todd were both tied going into the last day. But the advantage for me is that I was shooting on the 68 bird course and they were on the 66. So technically I had two more targets to break, right?
Mhm.
Um, and over the course of the round, I mean, the first like three stations I ran on the Promatic, and then I dropped one, which was fine. But I got to this weird true pair. I forget what station it was. It was over the water there at Providence. It was a 70 Chandelle paired with kind of a far edgy crosser as a true pair. And when I stepped up to it, I was last to go out of our squad. I knew right away, like, you see, like, I want to shoot it that way. You just know, right? And then the guy in front of me shot it a different way. So I was like, oh, that looks pretty good. And then the guy behind him shot it the way I thought originally. And there were all these thoughts in my head of like, then it started creeping in of I know I'm close to the top. Maybe I should shoot it conservative, right? There
Oh,
was just
geez. Yeah, I
way
can only
too much
imagine.
crap going on up here, right? And I wound up dropping three there or something like that after breaking my first pair, and then drop three, and then
Which
drop
which which
one.
one did you choose? Did you choose your original way or the other way?
Initially, for the first pair, I chose the way that I had thought when I stepped up, which was the far bird
So you
first.
trusted your original plan.
Correct. Yeah. And I broke the pair fine. And then we talked about this a little bit before of like you do then want to break the second pair instead of
Mm,
just doing the same thing again. And I did that and I actually dropped my middle pair after just smoking the first pair. So that set back a little bit, right? And then I think I broke one on the last pair, but then I missed an easy one on the station after that. And then I missed an easy one on the station after that. And
sorry,
after
not to cut you off, but let's go
Good.
back to those, right? I don't want to skip that.
Hmm.
Did that translate to you starting to think about it? And now you're like, okay, I can't drop anymore. Oh, I just missed another one. And
A
then,
little bit, a
okay,
little bit. And it was the unknown of like, I think if I had known that I was
had
tied for the
room.
lead, right? And all I had to do was just shoot a course. Like the
Mm,
other ones I shot had it didn't even matter. I was just shooting a course, right? They're shooting a course. I think that would have given me more peace. Now, Todd shot a really, really good score, and I don't even know if I could have kept up with that if I had seen it, but it wouldn't have put as much pressure on me as it did. And there were three targets for sure on the stations after that true pair course that I dropped that were all because of the pressure. So, that would have put me in second place, but you can always say, there's what could have been. But
right.
um, since then, I've started looking at main event courses, scores, and just scores in general, just so that I know where I'm at and I'm strong enough in my mental game to not think I need to shoot a score to beat the guy that was over here. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Um, so I look at it now just to have that extra bit of knowledge going into the last day.
mm. Good, good. Do you have any funny stories that have come up now that you've been shooting the pro circuit? something that you didn't expect either with shooters that you've shot with or something that you totally biffed it on or
I'm trying to think. There was I've had like some of my buddies, and I shoot with Gavin and Karen quite a bit. We just squad together, but there's been an ongoing joke that I like can never put my shells in the bucket. Like I always miss, and it's actually kind of true. And sometimes I'm like, you're not thinking about it. Like I'm not trying to put the shells in the bucket. I'm trying to break targets. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
sometimes you just miss. So then I'll turn around and one of my buddies, there's a meme going around on Instagram. I think it's of like Angel Reese. She misses a shot and the announcer is like bang, but it's like an air ball. So
Yeah.
he'll be like whispering that in my ear behind me. And there was one event at the Southeast this last week where I was talking about it'd be funny if Gavin made a video where he was like impersonating other professional shooters, like how they shoot or something like that. And I was in the middle of my station. I shot my first pair, and then I missed the bucket with mine. And I turned behind him while I'm in the station. I was like, "You could just impersonate me and just throw your shells wherever you want." That was kind of a funny moment. But there's always stuff that comes up, just during a round. We're all pretty close with each other, and I've gotten to know a lot of other um, big shooters that I looked up to a couple years ago. So we're always having fun together.
Right on. I think we could use a lot more comedy in this stuff. I was talking when I talked to Anthony Matarese on his interview. I asked him like, "Do you talk to your gun? Do you name your gun? Do you do?" He goes, "No, it's just a tool." And I wanted to do a clip of him saying that, and then going to him at his house with the gun propped up, and he's
Yeah,
talking to it. Actually, he goes, I didn't mean that, right? Like we're just pretending like he's actually talking to his gun, but he was
that's funny.
he wasn't game for it, and I was like, "Come
That's
on, man,
funny.
it'd be a funny little video to do." But
I think
no,
there's a lot of room for growth in the sport. There's so many personalities. Everybody's a
yeah,
little bit different, especially in all the top shooters. That, I think as the sport grows, we can get a big fan base around all these guys, myself
absolutely,
included, and just kind of make it like
just
every other
fun,
sport, like
fun. Yeah, make it
um,
accessible, make it fun, make
yeah,
people see the personalities behind it because that's really
yeah,
what sells stuff, right? People
exactly.
getting into the personalities. So. Hey, so real quick and I'll let you go because I know you've been giving me a lot of your time and I appreciate that. Where do you want to take your shooting now that you've gotten the taste of the pros and you're a
Yeah.
pro now over the next few years? Like, what's your goals here?
Yeah, so like I said before, my goal when I started shooting professionally was to make Team USA
Yeah.
for either FITASC and or sporting.
Mhm.
I think that as a sporting clay shooter from the US is the greatest accomplishment that you can have to represent your country. Not as a single accomplishment, because winning nationals or winning a World English is incredible, but from a like a growth standpoint and being on that team, I've heard many stories of how amazing that is, and I would love to
Yeah.
do that someday. So that's my biggest goal. But also just to get my first major win. That's more of an immediate goal because, hopefully if I get a major win, then I can make Team USA. But those are two of the things that I definitely want to accomplish in the next, couple years or so. And I think I'm headed there. I've seen every year my performance and my scores have gone up, and I've, won more tournaments or gotten a lot closer and a lot. So I'm excited for the future. But I think in the next 3 to 5 or maybe even 10 years, I want to keep growing my name in the sport and keep giving example for other shooters. Just be more out there as one of the elites, one of the top shooters in the country. No specific accomplishments really come to mind. Like, I would love to win whatever tournament that is, but
Yeah.
just keep growing as a shooter, keep learning, keep, growing my relationship with God and giving him glory to everybody that I can meet.
Right on. Well, you're
Yeah.
well on your way, so that sounds good. If you could, you just shot the all around at Gary's Place, which is a very unique event. I don't think there's
Yeah.
anything like that anywhere else, at least in my opinion, in the world. But I could be wrong. But if
Mhm.
you were to design your own dream competition, what would it look like?
That's a really good question. Um, Man, I think FITASC is one of my favorite games,
Same.
like specific games, just because of the target types and everything. I was actually in Fujairah for their
Okay.
Fujairah mountain shoot in February this year, and even though that wasn't FITASC technically, like we didn't have FITASC rules and stuff. It was still formatted like new style as a 200 bird event in the mountains and everything. And that was really cool. I just like the format of really hard singles and then you got to put together pairs. So I think a cool format would be a main event, kind of like a new style FITASC, but there were no FITASC regulations on that. Um, and man, as far as like where that tournament would be, I don't know. There's a lot of incredible clubs. I would love for it to be here at Northbrook, but I'm biased on that. But I think something that gives everybody equal opportunity, but adds just a little bit of nuance into it.
Mhm.
And I really love the idea of super finals, especially,
That was fun to watch. It was super fun
it,
to
and
watch.
that's the thing. Like it's fun to watch for all the spectators.
Right.
You get maybe a little bit of side betting in with all the guys behind you. They're all having fun, and but you get to watch the best of the best from that event compete right in front of you. Nothing that happened before that matters that much. Like it's about what's going on right now. And I think that's really cool. I think we should incorporate some type of a super final or something like that into more shoots,
Mhm.
or just put more emphasis on shoot-offs and on that because you see it a lot of tournaments. There's a runner-up for the main event shoot-off, and there's like 15 people standing there watching it, even though there's 1,000 people that are shooting this event. And if it was any other sport and it's overtime or bottom of the 10th inning or they have a playoff in golf or something, like everybody's there to watch that moment because that's when the winner's crowned. So I think we need to have more emphasis on that, um, and I would probably do that in my ideal tournament situation.
Okay. Now, you're a younger shooter, you're 22.
Yep.
What advice would you give to other younger shooters that are wanting to follow a similar path, whether it's balancing their school, their
Mhm.
business endeavors and shooting at an elite level? What would you give them as far as advice now that you're starting on that path and you've kind of started it?
Yeah, I would say the SCTP is a phenomenal tool to learn how to compete, to meet phenomenal people. Most of my best friends now were on my team from the SCTP, and we've been out of it for 6 years now, 5 years. So, um, go through that, maybe in your early years, get that team setting, learn how to compete with your best friends one on one, and then but just shoot bigger shoots because that's something that I wish I was exposed to when I had first started in the SCTP. Like Joe Finizzi, he shot in the SCTP. He was part of the Quail Creek Club down at in Florida, and I saw him at nationals a lot. But he excelled as a shooter because of how much he trained and how much of the other big events that he was shooting outside of the SCTP events. I
Mhm.
wish I would have done that, but I just didn't even know that nationals was a thing. All the regional, I had no idea. So I think that really accelerates you as a shooter. And whether you want to shoot sporting clays or not, I think shooting sporting clays will make you a better shooter in everything else. When I started focusing on sporting, my trap went up, my skeet went up, everything went up because it's more instinctive and you learn how to look at targets. And then, once you start just getting tournaments under your belt and you start learning how to win and how to compete and stuff, you have to have a balance
Mhm.
between your normal life and your competition life. I've set up my life now with my business with Payrock to where I don't want to have to rely on shooting well in order to shoot the next tournament, if that makes sense, right?
Mhm.
I don't want to have to rely on coaching other people in order to pay for the next flight to a regional. I want to have something in my pocket, and this opportunity is not available to everybody. I totally get that, but you don't want to rely on your performance in order to shoot the next tournament, is what I'm saying. So that's why I built my Payrock business to kind of fund that through that so that I don't have to get right out of a tournament and coach right away to make money. I can come back, decompress, go hunting, go watch football, hang out with my friends, and then get back into business and train and practice.
Mhm.
So I think that's a really good model to have, and just, balancing your life. Like you talked about school. I was fortunate that I was doing online school through college, so that's been the bulk of my professional career as a shooter. I had online school, so I kind of learned when to do things and when not. Um, like I would have homework at nationals, and I learned that me personally, it was better just to focus on what I was doing at hand. Because if you truly want to be a good competitor, you truly want to be top of the top in the sporting clays world, you got to give it your all. You can't, shoot during the day and then stay up late doing homework and then, wake up early in the morning and doing homework. There's
Yeah,
too many things going on there. And when I
right.
graduated, I noticed my scores went up because my mind wasn't on three different things: pay
Sure.
rock, shooting, and school. Now it's just on my business and shooting, and I've learned how to separate those
Hmm.
to where when I'm at a tournament, that's all I'm there for. So I think you just got to have separation and you got to understand what your goals are, because if you're a young kid and your parents really want you to shoot well, that's great, but you got to want it too. I've
Right.
seen way too many kids get ruined because their parents are pushing them into it too much and they had so much good potential, but they got run out of it. So you got to set your own goals. You got to, be your own man or woman, but just enjoy it.
No, that's good. That's great advice.
Yeah.
Couple things on that. SETP, NSCA, do you think there's potential for like a partnership so that they can kind of, complement each other rather than being two separate things?
I think there's potential for it. There should be in some facet of registered targets and SCTP. The
Hmm.
hard thing is that there's way more trap and skeet shooters in the SCTP than there are sporting clays. So I don't know if it's the NSCA that would make that introduction, but maybe a combination of ATA, NSSA, and NSCA work
Right,
together to promote it.
right,
The SCTP is one of the single greatest things that we have in shooting sports, specifically shotgun shooting sports. They're the ones that are pushing new kids into programs, making sure there's new passion, new
yeah,
competitors. And I think that that's neglected a little bit sometimes once you get to the professional level or you're just shooting registered targets. And I think that clubs around the country should be welcoming in those teams, making sure they're getting proper coaching, having proper facilities, because they're the ones that are growing up to be people like me, people like Joe, people like Todd, who did that before, and now we're at the on the big stage. So I think there needs to be more emphasis on it for sure. And maybe a partnership like that would be in the future. That'd be good.
no, that's a good point. And I don't see a problem with both of them being around and feeding each other,
Yeah, absolutely.
Seems like it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, let's end on something kind of fun. Let me think about this. Do you listen to music when you shoot, or not while you're shooting, but like, do you have like a pump up song or something that kind of gets you going?
Not really anything
No?
specific. I've actually thought about that. I think I'm gonna make a playlist to have before a tournament or something, just kind of like the same songs that I can always listen to. But I do listen to worship music, or like some rock or country. I'm not a huge music guy, but I've started getting into a little bit more of worship music for specific songs when I need that kind of like calming,
Yeah,
sound.
yeah, okay. Well, maybe
Yeah.
that's not the right question for you then. Let me do something
Sorry.
else. No, you're good. Uh, Finish the sentence. The sport of shooting has taught me.
Hmm. I think as a single word, the sport of shooting has taught me humility, or how to set an example for other
Right on.
people.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
great. No, I love that.
Yeah.
And I think you are. You're a good example of a good shooter, of a gentleman, and someone who's really thoughtful about how he approaches the game and also just approaches life. So,
Thank you.
not to knock age here, but for being a 22-year-old man, you're a pretty impressive dude. So thank you, Grayson, for joining me on the podcast. I really appreciate it,
Thank you
and
very much
for
for
sharing
having
your
me.
insights.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And, I hope everything that you have in the future goes well with this podcast. I really love what you're doing with it.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate that. It's a little passion project of mine. We'll see where it goes, but I'm going to keep doing it if people are willing to, be interviewed by me. So thank you very much.
That's great.
All right, Grayson, take care.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment on YouTube. It really helps the show reach more listeners. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave us a quick review and share it with someone who loves the outdoors or competitive shooting. Thank you very much for tuning into the California Clays podcast. I'll see you on the next episode.